again by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Perry scores! Corey Perry!
Ilya able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal. Perry in the face, 1-1.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Forever Mighty Postgame Show. It's Pete Davidson, Eddy, and Pat on the mics tonight. To talk about a wonderful first period the Ducks played, and then ended up coming out with an 8-4 loss. But more importantly, on this show, we'll get to the fun stuff about all the trade rumors going around, and the everlasting Troy Terry, who shows up and denies what I would be very happy about if he got traded. So, what's up, guys?
Not much, man. I just had a great time watching that game. I feel like I'm the only person who enjoyed the hell out of that game, other than, Joe Sakic, but that was a blast.
The posts on that side of the ice enjoyed it too.
Oh, yeah. They got a lot of attention.
It started pretty fun. I'll admit that. It started like...
Are you kidding? Dude, they scored 4 goals in the third period. That was awesome. I get we lost, but we suck. They're Colorado. It's fine. Just...
You know what would have made that
Just
better
enjoy it.
if Trevor Zegras actually cashed in on that chance and scored. It could have been 8-1 if he had his first NHL goal. He wouldn't have cared.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I mean, but are we going full tank right now, though, guys? I don't really see there being any other way out of it.
I mean, I guess
You have to drive the tank. We talk about it a lot, but.
It's unintentional, right?
Where we have been.
Detroit is tanking. They don't have any assets really. They don't have big assets to sell. I saw somebody, I think it's Detroit Red Wings writer for the Hockey Writer, tweeted out something like, "Here's the guys that are available for the Red Wings," and at the top of the list was Bobby Ryan. They don't really have tradable assets, and the guys they're keeping around are young guys like Larkin and Mantha that are staying in the organization. And then you look at Ottawa, and they just have a bunch of young guys, and they brought in some veterans to just basically hit the cap floor and not be completely awful. I think the only comparable team to Anaheim, which is really awful, is Buffalo, in a sense that they tried to be competitive, and they're just still bad. I think the Ducks are more in that boat, where they're not even trying to tank. It's just an unintentional tank because they're so bad that they're just in that mix.
What do you think, Pat?
I just have a hard time with understanding where this whole trade situation's going. Honestly, the whole thing is just puzzling to me.
So here's my question.
I mean, everything pops out, right? Friedman, about Rakell, about Terry. There was Jones mentioned. People talking about Bob Murray, and we all want him cast out for sure, but we all know it's not going to happen. And what he's holding on for, what he's not holding on for. We still have a month until the deadline, by the way. Still got a month. Got a long way.
Yeah, it's gonna be a long month. But I think me and Eddy talked about this a little bit on the last show. I'm super curious to see what happens, because I think the quarantine period, especially if the trades are interdivision or especially international, if there's trades up to Canadian teams, the quarantine thing is going to be a big deal, and I really do wonder if we're going to see
2 more weeks.
Right, but if you do a deadline day deal, you're losing half of the games left to get that player back.
Come on, most of the trades happen prior to the deadline. Most of the time, the big trades, you'll see bigger names go a week or two before the deadline, or start to ramp up now.
Yeah, but what I'm saying
on occasion you see a big deal on the day.
But even without that, right? There's still. That it's going to take 2 weeks of quarantining before you can join your new team. So I wonder if we're going to unofficially see it moved up, because I don't know, unless it's little deals, I don't know that they're going to be willing, if someone's doing the St. Louis trading for Delzado or Philadelphia trading for Grant, that's one thing. But if anybody actually tries to take a swing on one of these free agents, especially Toronto, who, seems to have a really clear path to the finals, they got to do that sooner than later, because they they can't just have new guys in all the time, or they can't give their new guys like 4 games to figure it out.
Well, Dubas, I was about to say Dubas tweeted today, but there was comments from Dubas on Twitter today where he said that the Leafs are looking to make a trade ASAP because of that quarantine period. And I know, Steven, you had mentioned this a couple shows ago where we talked about the trade deadline maybe not being as active as it normally is because the teams, especially the competitive ones that are wanting to add these pieces, want them in there as soon as possible for as many games as they can. And, that's almost a positive and a negative for the Ducks in the sense of moving some of their guys that the Leafs might just, as much as they're interested in a player like Rickard Rakell and the fit is there, they might just move on to somebody else just to get this deal done ASAP. If the Ducks are looking, if the price is high, like they said, Calgary was basically priced out of Rickard Rakell, and it looks like Toronto might be priced out as well, despite having some of the assets. If they feel like...
But there's only 7 teams up there. Why is all the focus up there? I don't understand. There's other trade partners that I could swing at here.
There are.
It's amazing to be like, this is like what's happening. It's like, Wyshynski puts out that tweet today. Ask around the league how it's going. Quiet, except for Anaheim. It's like, really? And then Anaheim, only reports you hear from them is they're trying to shop in Canada. Like the place that's going to be the hardest to move somebody there because of quarantine is just...
I don't think they was necessarily saying the Ducks were shopping
Rakell's
in Canada.
Moved to Boston.
Yeah.
I think everyone's linked to Boston, right?
It was just the fit, right?
They can't score 5-on-5 right now. They need somebody.
Yeah. It was the fit, I think. Like the fit that Rickard Rakell would fit so well in Toronto. And that playing him with a guy like Austin Matthews would probably be the best bet for Rickard Rakell. And the fact that Toronto actually does have some assets, a first-round pick and a top prospect that they're apparently willing to give up, according to Kyle Dubas, that it could actually make sense.
Who's that prospect? Do you know?
No, but it's probably Rodion Amirov or Nick Robinson or Timothy Lindgren or somebody like that.
Mm-hmm. So can you guys pull any positives out of tonight's game that you saw? I mean, we all got a little excited about the scoring, but not to be the downer. I don't want to bring the pod down on that, but like the goaltending for the Avs was really bad in that first period. I think the Ducks were being heavily outshot, and they still scored on their first 2 shots on goal. So it wasn't like Colorado's goaltender had any business being in that game. And then when all of a sudden Grubauer comes in, it was over with. But I think it was nice to see Henrique play well tonight. He got on the scoreboard
just that line.
Times. Yeah,
that whole line.
Yeah, that line was great.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I definitely agree that obviously the fact that once Misko was out of the game, it was a shutout. Is relevant, but I do think we did see them start to develop a little bit of momentum or energy early, and they did kind of have little periods where they were on their front foot. I think a lot of it felt like it was driven by that and I felt like Rakell was at least active. Like they were able to get some pressure. It was only a matter of time before Colorado kind of grabbed the game away from them, but I think you saw a little bit of them kind of rolling, and you got to see Zegras be a little bit creative. So, did
you guys see who got absolutely imploded 5-on-5? Which line?
Oh God, probably the 4th line.
Well, yes, they did too, but it was actually Getz, Rakell, and Comtois with like the worst offensive.
But were they matched up against
Obviously,
McKinnon? Because then it would make sense.
I believe so. And they allowed 3 goals against, but their underlying numbers were just pure trash.
I think every time we played the Avalanche, whoever is matched up against Nathan McKinnon gets caved in. I don't remember how. I think this was probably last season, or maybe it was earlier this year.
Shocking.
Yeah, but remember when we were matching Derek Grant against Nathan McKinnon? Oh, shocker!
That was
this year.
That was early this
they
season.
got absolutely caved in, and it's like every game you go up against McKinnon because it's McKinnon, Rantanen, and Landeskog. Not even just the Ducks, any team. You go up against those 3, you're screwed for that night. Like you're getting caved in no matter what. Like Nathan McKinnon will put up 9 shots himself, probably score a couple goals, and Rantanen will get a couple as well. Like it's just up there, and especially with the struggles in Boston this year, it's potentially the best line in the NHL right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they've always been as long as McKinnon's on a line, that line's deadly. And especially the last few seasons for sure. I mean, and that guy's just a beauty to watch. How many posts did he hit tonight? 3?
I think so. He had at least 2 in the first.
Yeah, crossbar and a post.
The whole team hit like 6 or 7 tonight.
That's what it
It's
seemed like.
ridiculous.
I marked down 4, but I think there was actually a couple more in there, and just a few that grazed. The Ducks had a couple too. Obviously, Trevor Zegras was the big one. I before we move on from this roster stuff, I don't know if we even talked about this, but Sam Steele was scratched for second night in a row tonight. Anything to read into with that? I know we said he probably deserved the 1-game scratch, but Derek Grant gets in, he scores a penalty shot. You know that means he's probably in next game. And Delorier was mixing it up physically, and Heinen scored, and that was the entire fourth line tonight. So I was hoping to see Sam Steele back in the game. I'm just not sure how he finds his way back into the lineup at this point, where they seem to have some set lines, and I think at this point it might be for a guy like Isaac Lundestrom, which I don't really want to see him come out of the lineup.
All right, so I'm not even going to mention Steele in this. You mentioned Delorier. I really like the little harken back to old school hockey tonight with Kadri sucker punching Delorier, and then Delorier like going completely off the rails and wanted to kill him and skate around and then talk trash in the penalty box and then get out and try to fight him. We all knew Kadri wasn't going to fight. It's like I was messaging you guys. That was a Corey Perry move. That's
a Nazem Kadri move.
Punch this dude and then never ever fight that guy. It's not. Why would he? Why would Kadri?
He's made a career out of that. Nazem Kadri does that 100 times a season, and most of it.
So did Pears. I mean, Pears would fight, but like Pears didn't really fight anyone like Delorier. Like D'Lo's a legit fighter. I mean, Perry fought Datsuk, I believe, and got beat up. Like it was like he couldn't take on Pavel. I mean, I don't know what that was about, but yeah, this whole thing with Delorier and like the old school part of me that I love old school hockey, but like I'm sitting there going, someone go out and just grab Kadri. Like I don't care, someone go grab him. It's like. What would that have done? Nothing. Would it have made the game better? Probably. More entertaining.
Pat, this is exactly why we have you on the show, because I was going down a downer path talking about Sam Steele getting scratched, and you brought it back to Delorier just trying to smash people's heads in.
Yeah. Oh, dude, but I have to. Like, this is like my favorite part of these types of seasons, is these games that just go pure mayhem. And I was waiting for that. I'm like, all D'Lo had to do was just knock Kadri on his ass or punch him with a glove on and drop him, and then it would have been mayhem on the ice. I was just hoping for that. Give us something. This team stinks.
No, we were deprived of that little bit of messiness from the good old days. That's for sure. But real quick, I want to touch on the Sam Steele thing just because.
Because that was the original question.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. But I just think it's interesting. Here, I'll do it this way. I will turn it into a positive, which is there was significant questions around Lundstrom's ability to translate his game, which seemed subtle, at level. He has taken Sam Steele's position or his place in line. And that wasn't what anybody expected at the beginning of the season, and is definitely not what anybody thought Lundstrom was going to be doing. So Sam Steele being out of the lineup is maybe not great for Sam Steele because he hasn't been playing well, but I do think a really positive sign that we have two young centers like that we can put on this team and just be like, yeah, we're going to play whichever one of you is better. And right now, Lundstrom's clearly better. Maybe they try to send Sam Steele back down or something. I don't know. I don't know his waiver situation. But I don't think it's a negative. I think it's a positive in so much as, center was always the big question mark for this prospect pool, which is where are these centers going to come from? And I think Lundstrom's really kind of shown that he's got more to his game than people think. That's a very encouraging sign. So that's for me the thing with Sam Steele.
He's looked better than Sam Steele.
Yeah,
Sam Steele has not looked good this year. And to address the hardcore luchador, I said Perry has never fought anyone of like fighter ilk. He has never fought anybody. So just to clear the road there, he's definitely dropped the gloves, but he's not dropping the gloves with like Delorier, or he's not going to drop the gloves with. I mean, who would he play then back then? I mean, John Scott, is he going to drop? No, he's not doing that. That's what I mean by that. But yeah, as far as Sam Steele and Lundstrom, Lundstrom has just turned out to be the exciting player this year. Last year, not so much. Steele got to stay. I think you're absolutely right on that. I don't want to say the same player, but they're at that. I think they're at the same level when it comes to how they're producing. So, I just like you said, whoever's playing better is going to slot in. And I don't think there's really too much into this. the Ducks, in my opinion, aren't going to trade either one of those guys, especially because they're trying to get the young players. I can't imagine them trading one of them off.
Yeah, I can't see them trading any. It's just I can't remember this year out of the young kids a guy that's been scratched 2 games in a row. Like we've seen Terry being scratched for a game, we've seen Jones been scratched for a game, Lundstrom's been taken out, every now and then for a game, and then this is back to back for Sam Steele. So maybe it's a bit of trying to send a bit more of a stronger message than some of the other guys this year. And I think Sam Steele's been scratched already once before this. Where he came back and responded pretty well. So I think out of everybody, at the beginning of the year, he was the guy I said was the furthest in front of a lot of the prospects. And now I think he's, the furthest behind because I think Jones has taken a step forward. Lundstrom's taken a big step forward. Maxime Comtois obviously has taken the biggest step forward of everybody. And Troy Terry has actually been impressive. And you look at the game he had today, he actually looked pretty good. And I like that line. And I'm actually excited for Zegras, Henrique, and Terry moving forward to see what they can do. Because I thought, even outside of the first period, I thought they still looked like a pretty dangerous line. But then there's Sam Steele. And defensively, I think he's been okay. Again, faceoffs aren't everything, especially nowadays. But he's clicking at 56% in the faceoff dot, which is something I never thought I would say about him at the NHL level. But the offense isn't there, and that's the problem for him right now. I mean, we expected him to be an offensive centerman, and he's just not producing at that level. And he's really not creating or doing anything exciting, right? We've seen a hat-trick game from Lundstrom. We saw the toe drag, and then this game from Troy Terry. We saw a nice play from Max Jones the other game where he was 3 stride lengths behind somebody, beat them to the puck and scored. We've obviously come to our season this year. We haven't seen that from Sam Steele this year, where in his rookie year he looked great, and even in the second season he had some flashes of brilliance, a nice stretch at the end of the season. Just haven't seen that from him this year.
Yeah, but you just kind of want to chalk this up to this is how the season's going to go.
Yeah, I would say so. Like, I don't want to read into it at this point. We'll take what we can get in the fact that the 4 other young players are taking steps forward, and only one guy is maybe taking some steps backward. I think that's a positive in its own right, that it's not all 5 of them that aren't getting off and kind of taking some steps forward. So, we'll take what we can get. But, yeah, I wouldn't read into it yet.
So here's my thing I want to ask, because I wanted to ask you the other night, but now that we have Pat here, it'll be better. If you guys had to rank the 6 kids, and I'm going to include Mahura, from at this point most confident being on the team going forward to least confident being on, how would you rank them? So Mahura, Jones, Comtois, Terry, Steve.
Pat, do you want me to take this first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Comtois is obviously at the top of that list. There's a big gap, I think, between Maxime Comtois and the strides he's taken this year and everybody else. I think just stylistically and the way he fits on this team, I'd probably put Max Jones second. The production hasn't been there, but I liked what I've seen from him, and I think he kind of fills a niche on this team that the other guys don't. And then I think from there it gets fairly murky, right? We're looking at Sam Steele, Troy Terry, Josh Mahura. Who am I missing in this? Out of that? Lundstrom. Where it's you're kind of picking and choosing what player you like more, the style you like more of those guys. I think when you look at the underlying numbers and take everything into account, I think you kind of have to throw Troy Terry into that 3rd spot there, and then it becomes a battle between Steele, Lundstrom, and Mahura for those final 3 spots. And just based off the strides he's taken this year, I think you have to throw Lundstrom above Steele and Mahura at that point.
I don't even have to say anything. Honestly, that's how I would put them. I really would. I think it's Lundstrom, Steele, Mahura on the bottom, Comtois, Jones, and Terry at the top. That's kind of how it shakes down for me.
Oh, see, that's interesting, because I think for me, I have Lundstrom second. I would go Comtois, Lundstrom, Jones, Terry, Mahura, Steele.
I mean, but it's kind of splitting hair,
yeah.
Right? I mean, Lundstrom has scored and played. I guess.
Yeah, I have Lundstrom above Terry and Jones. For me, he's only behind Comtois, I think.
Well, as long as we keep playing Colorado, Terry will wake up.
Yeah,
I mean,
he loves playing in Denver. I think the thing too is I think outside of Maxime Comtois, like Pat said, it is kind of splitting hairs, right? Like Comtois is clear number one above all of them right now, just based off the production he's had this year. I know he's cooled down a little bit lately, but 19 points and 9 goals kind of speaks for itself. It's miles above any of the other guys that we're talking about here. So, that's the one thing I think everybody can agree on. When you mention those 6 names right now, there is no question who the number one is. You can rank the remaining 5 however you like, and I think there's an argument there to be had to put any of them anywhere there. But Maxime Comtois is the clear number one, just based on the way he's played this year.
Yeah, no, I agree. I definitely agree.
I wish he woke up a little bit tonight. That line was just not good. I want to talk to you guys about the defense. I know we're missing the best defenseman on our team in Lindholm. Well, people are going to say whatever on that, but and Manson. It's important to note both those guys not being in the lineup. Obviously, we're well aware, but it's it's been really bad watching, because I really wanted to just kind of shit on goaltending tonight. I mean, Miller probably wasn't at his best. I mean, I think the broadcast even made a mention, like, does he have a new glove? Because
he
like,
had to have had a new glove
to catch the puck's just bouncing out. So I wasn't going to just dump on him for that, but it was like, my God.
Yeah, new gear, new glove, clearly.
Hutton and Larson. We need players back in this lineup. That's all I'm going to say.
The ridiculous thing is you have guys in San Diego who you could give a shot to and see if it works. It's not like you're stuck with Hutton and Larson. You've got Cody Curran, who we haven't even given a shot to yet. You've got Hunter Drew. You've got Jamie Drysdale on the taxi squad, who Bob Murray said before he goes back to Erie in the OHL, he wants to give him an NHL game or two. And he's on the taxi squad still. And I figured today would be the day to get him in. I know it's a tough game against one of the top teams in the NHL, but he was working back from a puck to the face and was on the taxi squad to kind of build up his strength without playing. But then he goes down to San Diego, plays 2 games on the weekend, still on the taxi squad. Gulls don't play to Saturday. It just felt like, okay, throw him in on Tuesday. He's got some time to rest until the Gulls game on Saturday. And if you want to send him back down, send him back down. And Trump West 2020 just said in the chat, I don't think Drysdale is NHL ready. I don't either, but you at least can give him a game and see how he does. It's better than Hutton and Larson at this point.
Yeah,
kudos to you, by the way, Steven. I saw you figured out how to mute your mic.
Yeah, it's a big day.
I had to make note of that.
It's a big day for me.
It's been wild that Murray's talking about Drysdale coming up. He has no defense ready to play an NHL game outside of a Fowler and Hakanpää sometimes. And it's just wild to me that they don't bring him up to play a game or two. Let him come play.
Yeah, the one thing I would say is I would be curious to see if he gets these next 2 games, which is against Arizona. Like, I think you could probably make an argument that because of his game and his skating ability, that maybe it would be easier for him to play in an open style like this. But I think, obviously Arizona just doesn't have the level of offensive talent that Colorado has. And so I do think if they bring in Drysdale for his first couple games against Arizona, I think that would make a lot of sense.
You just had to do it, eh? Just had to throw the Drysdale out there.
Yeah.
My favorite thing, I don't want to say my favorite thing, but the most ironic thing about this is I think it was near the beginning of March, a comment or a quote from Bob Murray in an Eric Stevens article where he said the best thing about this team or kind of the strongest part about this team right now is the defense and goaltending. And then the Ducks rattle off a 9-game stretch here in March where they've allowed 41 goals, which is 4.55 goals per game. And then in their last 6, it's 31, which is 5.16 goals per game in their last 6. They're outscored 31-17 in those last 6 games. I know it's not just on the goaltending and the defense, and it's kind of a shift in their mentality here and trying to score some more goals. But clearly it's not the strength of this team right now. I think the only strength you could say is you do have two exceptional goaltenders in John Gibson and Ryan Miller, but the guys playing in front of them right now, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter who you have in net. I think John Gibson is clearly one of the.
Do you think that John Gibson faked his injury tonight to miss the game?
My God, what are you throwing out here?
He just knew it was going to be a pure shit show out there in front of him against this lineup, and he was just like, I think I pulled my groin.
He made a deal with Bob Murray. I won't ask for a trade
not.
if you don't play me against Nathan McKinnon and the Colorado Avalanche tonight.
I almost wouldn't blame him for that. I know he didn't. All these guys want to play, I would think. But yeah, Chris made a good point though in chat saying that Drysdale probably couldn't get into Denver. The snow there is insane. They'd be getting feet of snow a night, and I think the Ducks, their flight got canceled several times, and they didn't get in until the same day of the game. Right? Did they get in today?
They'll be lucky to get out of there to go to Arizona.
Yeah, so see what happens. So it makes sense. Maybe that's why Drysdale didn't get in. But yeah, if I was if I was Gibby, I'd be like, man, do I want to be in for this one?
do me a solid. I got a lower body injury. I'm feeling it a little bit tonight. Throw Millsy in there, and we'll call up Stolarz for a backup and sit this one out. I'll come in against the Coyotes.
We'll see what happens. Right? I mean, this
defense.
They really need Hampus Lindholm and Josh Manson back in the lineup, but that's a long time away.
But does that do much?
Does
that change?
We're gonna have a lot more fun.
Yeah.
Does it do much?
Yeah, I get obviously Hampus Lindholm is a step up over, Josh Mahura defensively and Hutton and Larson, but how does that really stop the bleeding at this point?
It literally makes this team slightly more competitive. Not to get trounced 8-4. Because realistically, the game should have been 12-4 with how many posts the Avs have hit. The Avs just owned the ice tonight. The ice. So it's just very interesting to me that you'd even say that, considering the amount of ice time these guys have been getting. Who aren't good
I like how you say
defense.
slightly more competitive, but we all know you really mean just less bad.
No, because it's, oh my God, man. The missed assignments, whether it's on the penalty kill's been horrible. The missed assignments 5-on-5. It's just, I wonder, man. I just wonder what's going on in Anaheim right now with this team, because you also, I want to take a step on the same note. Eddy, for those of you don't know, he loves to give me a hard time because I hate the New York Islanders. So anytime that he gets the opportunity to see a good stat for the Islanders, he decides to chuck it in my face. And he made mention that they've won how many games?
They had won 9 in a row until tonight. I didn't even know this. I just thought it was amazing that they're like one of the only teams that could win 9 in a row, and then you surprisingly find out that they won 9 in a row. It was I think 7 of them were against the Sabres and the Devils.
That's like the Avs going on a 9-game win streak, and they played.
It
LA
must be
and
fun
Anaheim.
to be in that division, and you've got Buffalo and New Jersey in that division. Oh, and Detroit, or no?
But what I was gonna say to you about that though, Trotz, is he the difference maker?
Yeah, 100%.
Is he against those teams?
Yes and no.
Is he?
Yes and no, because they still have a good record outside of that 9-game winning streak, and like that team.
Yeah, don't they have like the second best points percentage
that
in the
team
league?
on paper is. I don't understand how they play as well as they do. They don't have a lot of weapons on that team. I think they have some underrated players like Anders Lee, and Matt Barzal is, as we know, probably the best player that they have. But their defense isn't that great. Their goaltending, it's okay, but Varlamov and Sorokin, so they got 2 Russians back there, and I don't know. It clearly coaching gives them some benefit there. I think you need to give a little bit more credit to Barry Trotz for what he's put together there. And
I know, but then I have to give.
You can give credit to the team. You can still hate the fans.
No, I still hate the team and the fans. Like I don't know, man. I'll never ever be understanding of anyone why they would appreciate the Islanders outside of the 1980s. But you know,
My bossy baby.
I can't stand him. But yeah, so this comes down to another point I want to make about this team with Anaheim. We fire Dallas Eakins. Who do we bring in? Who comes in? Everybody wants to say the big name. Who's the big name? Gerard Gallant. Is he going to come here? Is he going to sign a deal for this team?
I don't see why not.
Are they going to pay him?
If he does,
he's going to want X dollars.
If he doesn't get the Seattle job, then I don't see why he wouldn't come here. Like, look at the jobs he's taken before this. He went to where did he start? Carolina was where he started, I think. Or it was because then he went Carolina to, or was it
Carolina, Florida?
Yeah, Vegas. I think it was Carolina. But yeah, then to Florida and then to Vegas. So he goes to a young.
Where they left him for a cab.
Yeah, he goes to a young Florida team that had Barkov at 18, Huberdeau at 20 or 21, Ekblad at 18, and took him to the playoffs. And they were actually a good team, had a good record, and then kind of got left in the dust there because the second season he started like 11-10 after they made the playoffs, and they just bailed on him, where he was clearly making them a better team that season before, and they just didn't live up to expectations. Same thing kind of happened to him in Vegas, right? Like, he takes them all the way to the Stanley Cup final and does well another season after that, and then starts slow in that third season, and then gets the can.
He was Columbus, Florida.
That's what it was. He had a young team in Columbus too when he started there. Like, I don't see why he wouldn't come to Anaheim. He's got a young team, can work with some players like Drysdale and Zegras and kind of get things going. Like, I think he makes this team better. I think he's a better coach to bring in to develop some of the younger players. But at the end of the day, are the Samuel going to pay him to come here because he has a bit more of a track record than Dallas Eakins did, and is going to command a bit more of a salary than Dallas Eakins does.
He's also been fired in the third year of every team he's coached. That's funny. Just a random thing I saw there, but I don't know, man.
I would rather have Claude Julien, honestly.
Really?
Like, if you were going to bring in an established coach like that, I'd rather bring in Claude Julien. I think it would be a lot smarter. I think, look, the big problem with Gallant is he wants to make a shit ton of money on his next deal, which is fair. He's entitled to it. But he also doesn't want to take orders from the front office, which is why he specifically didn't get the New Jersey job, because New Jersey has a very prominent analytics department, and they institutionally have say in roster construction, player usage, and things like that. And he didn't want to deal with that. So honestly,
guess what? We don't have that here.
Well, that's part of Vegas. But the thing with Vegas was, the biggest issue with Vegas is that Marc-Andre Fleury turned into a pumpkin. Like, it was what do you call it? Save percentage driven, mostly. But I think if you bring in Claude Julien, I think he brings a level of respect. I think he brings a little. I don't want to get too intangibly, but I do think there's a lot of things that he brings as far as a presence. He has some prestige as an individual. You know what I mean? He's successfully coached in two of the biggest markets, in the league. Like, him coming to Anaheim he would kill it here. He seems like a pretty affable guy, away from hockey. So I think him coming to Anaheim would be a huge decrease in pressure, and I think he's a really, really good coach. I would rather have him, I think, than Gerard Gallant, as much as I do think Gerard Gallant is
in all honesty. I think if Dallas Eakins gets fired, it's after we find out what happens at the general manager position, right? Like, Bob Murray is done, likely, hopefully. There's no way they bring him back. I really hope not, but he's likely done at the end of this season. New GM comes in, makes a decision there on whether he wants to keep Dallas Eakins around. And I think there's only two ways that it goes here. Is that new GM comes in and says, okay, I'm going to give you a season to Dallas Eakins, show me what you got, and we'll go from there. Or he's seen enough and he wants to bring in his own guy, and Dallas Eakins is gone, and then we have to wait. It becomes an interview process. Brings in the guys that he wants, And it might be later in the summer that we find out who the head coach is. And, at the end of the day, I'm more interested, honestly, in who becomes the general manager of this team, because I think that has more impact on this organization in the long term and even the short term. We have a new direction, a new face, a new kind of decision-making process in the front office that we haven't had in a very long time. That's the most exciting part of this offseason. Not the trades, not the draft and who we can bring into this team. It's finally getting a new voice in the front office and a new direction to take this team. I think that's the big thing we're all waiting for. A new head coach could come with that, but ultimately it's getting that guy, that new face in the general manager spot.
Whatever happens with that, they need to do it. And they won't, but they need to do it before the draft. They need to clean that house up.
Draft is in July. Both drafts are going to be in July. So we've got a little extra time because it was announced today that I think officially that the draft isn't being pushed and the entry draft will be in July, like middle of July, right, Ed?
Yeah, it's not getting pushed back, so it's going to be,
Are they going to do a double draft?
God, no. No, they were only going to do that, I think, if it got pushed back.
That'd be amazing.
But no, I think you guys are absolutely right. Like, it's definitely going to be an off-season move if a new coach comes in, because I know everybody wants to get them both out of here right now, but like, it just doesn't make much of a difference. There's nothing, maybe general manager, but you're not going to get any of the candidates that you want in the building. So you can either wait or you can give it to Madden as like a trial run and give him some authority to actually make moves and allow him not to make moves out of fear that he's going to lose his job. But, I do think it's an off-season move. I think the interesting question is if they do go internal and the San Valley's decide Madden is different enough from Murray, I wonder what that says for Dallas Eakins. Does Madden want to hold on to him just as, that way he still has that first card to play? Or is he like, no, I didn't agree with that decision, and so I would like to start over? I think it's a really interesting question. And if they go with a less established or up-and-coming GM, I think bringing in someone like Claude Julien would be a really good move because he could be a bit of a figurehead.
I think one thing we have to remember, sorry, somebody mentioned this in the chat, is Bob Murray's not necessarily getting fired at the end of the season. His contract's just up. Like, he's just done in the sense that he's not getting fired. He's just not getting given another contract here. And the one thing...
He doesn't have... I thought he had one more option on it. I thought he had an option for another year.
I don't think so. I hope to God that's not true. I really hope it's not. But...
let's go around the mics real quick. I'm gonna ask a question, the same one, but I'm very curious because you guys are very different how you guys approach hockey. Name two things you would do to try to right the ship for next season. This season's lost. Okay, we're cool. Get a high draft pick. But what do you do if you could make two changes heading into next season? So have at it. What are the two things you guys would change?
Yeah. So not including like front office or anything like that?
No, the whole organization. I should have said organizationally. What would you do?
Team,
organization, if everything. Lower beer prices.
First thing is a new general manager. That's what this organization needs more than anything right now. The draft is going to be the draft. You're going to get whatever pick you get. That's the change that's going to come no matter what. I think a new general manager is one thing, and I think to kind of lead into that is trading the players you need to trade right now. I think Rickard Rakell is among those players in terms of how high their value is going to be. It's not going to get any higher than it is right now. And you risk maybe not signing him on that new deal if he doesn't want to come back. I know Steven and I kind of talked about that a couple shows ago in terms of if Rickard Rakell would re-sign with this team and if it would be the best bet for him. But I think you have to make that decision now and move on from guys like Rickard Rakell and potentially Josh Manson and other guys that you need to move now where the value is probably at its highest. And then that second one is the big one. There is a new general manager. It's what this organization desperately needs, is a new voice, a new face, a new direction, because right now we've got Bob Murray, who's been behind the helm for the last decade plus, and it's been the same, a lot of the same. And I don't want to say he's always been bad, because I don't think it's fair to say he's always been bad, but it's clear the game has kind of evolved past his philosophy and his way of building a team, and it's just not working.
Yeah. So I just looked real quick. It's through the 21-22 season. So he does have one more year left on his contract. The 2-year extension came in the middle of the 18-19 season.
You just killed me.
I think for me, the first thing that I would do is I would make sure, because I've heard some stuff that like Bob Murray's kind of in charge of everything. My first move would be separating hockey operations and business operations. I think that's crucial to the success of a sports franchise. I really think you don't want your on the field product people having to worry about concession prices and vendors and things like that. Like, it's just not valuable. And I think it puts an unnecessary strain on people who are better served focusing on other things. Bring in people for jobs that they're good at. And the second thing for me I would invest in an analytics department. I think I completely agree with Eddy that I think there is an institutional overhaul that needs to happen. To be completely honest, I would be open to firing literally everybody, with the exception maybe being Madden, just because I do think he seems to have a track record of drafting, and so talk to him about that. But other than that, I think you got to get Nonis out of there. Like, there's no reason for him to be there.
Why is Dave Nonis still with this organization?
He's just quietly going about his
just
business.
Wild to me. It's like it's like that guy you give a job to because you owe him a favor.
Yeah.
And then everyone forgets that he works there, but you're paying him an extreme amount of money. Like, that's Millionaire Club. That's what they do. Oh, I owe you a favor, dude.
I don't know how I missed the Bob Murray contract up in 2022 thing, but that has absolutely ruined the rest of the season for me.
Was 18-19 not the year that they had that extreme losing streak?
That was 18-19 was the year that
the
Bob
12-game losing streak.
Yeah, amazing.
It's funny. It's like that literally comes like a month and a half, 2 months before he takes over behind the bench. I have 2 more years here. Well, I guess I can fire my buddy and my pal.
So the two things that I was
coaching an
going to
NHL
change
team off the bucket list. Sorry.
would be my whole thing is analytics, and trade anybody over the age of 26 years old except for John Gibson and Hampus Lindholm. And I'd even take offers on Lindholm, but I mean really just John Gibson. Trade anybody else. Just blow the whole thing up. I'm totally cool with that. There's not a lot of bad contracts. There's a few bad contracts on this team that I don't like. And they really need an analytics department. No, analytics is not the end all be all of everything. But I mean,
they've got one analytics person in the organization right now.
Like, just do something with that, please. Like, just get it up to speed. It's where the league's going. It's kind of what the other teams have already been doing for years. I mean, you can have a bad analytics department. Buffalo has one. But then it also kind of gets mixed up with roster construction, but who can make decisions. So there definitely needs to be an overhaul in the front office for sure. But I think that would come along with it. That's why I would say analytics, because obviously you're taking out the old guard that doesn't like it. And then whoever's typing is typing like a madman into my ear. Steven. So, I definitely would think of the analytics and trade everybody over the age of 27.
Yeah. Okay, before we move on from the Bob Murray stuff, because now I have a different viewpoint of it with the contract being up a year further than I thought it was. Do you actually realistically see the Samuelis firing Bob Murray at the end of this season with 1 year left on his contract? Because I don't see them doing it. I haven't been convinced that they are willing to pull that move with this guy.
I don't think it's going to be a fire, but I've said this before. I think he's going to get promoted. I really think that's what they're going to do. Is
the old GM to head of hockey ops?
Yeah, exactly.
But at the end of this year or at the end of 2022? Okay.
At the end of this year, yeah. No, I really do. Because that way you allow him to save face, and you're not paying for a guy who's not doing anything. I mean, he might not really do much to begin with, but it's a little bit easier, I think, just to be like, look, hell, we'll even give you another contract extension, and we won't even make you do anything for it. But we're going to bring in somebody under you, and they're going to have the authority. And you can either accept that or we can fire you. And
How
maybe
is somebody in chat saying that the Samuelis don't care? Like,
Okay, but
that's insane to me.
I can kind of see that viewpoint in a sense, because why are we sticking with Bob Murray and to some same extent there Dallas Eakins at this point? You have full authority in this organization to fire Bob Murray. The Ducks are 8-16 and 8-16-6 right now, and that's okay. That we're fine with that. We're fine keeping that. We're fine with keeping this guy in charge of this organization for another season.
If we already weren't at almost the hour mark tonight, I would love to open the book up on Bob Murray and talk about how he's probably not as bad as everyone thinks he is. That it's more of it's a recency bias for our being upset about Bob Murray. He's done a lot for this franchise, and that's definitely a podcast.
I think we're all on the same page with that.
Yeah.
I think we all understand that what he's done in the past is separate from what he's done now, and there's a lot of recency bias.
Injuries. I mean, injuries have just been horrendous on this team with large contracts given. That happens in sports, right? He's gonna get the benefit of the doubt on those kinds of things. No one's gonna hold him up to the guillotine and be like, "Well, Patrick Eves, way to go, thanks, man." Ryan Kessler, why'd you give him so much money and screw our our cap situation up? Corey Perry, what are you doing? Didn't you know he was gonna downtrend like this part of his career? Like, those things happen in every sport, and they kind of just happened. Yeah. I mean, all at once to players we counted on night in and night out on this team, and that's really.
But when you're talking about firing somebody, it is all about the recent. What have you done for me lately? Right? Like, you should not be taking into account what he has done in the past when you're talking about moving on from it as a general manager. It's everything about now. When we're talking about him and his legacy and anything like that, then you can start focusing on what he's done in the past. And when he moves on and we look back on him and we'll say, you know what, Bob Murray wasn't as bad as we thought, but the end was bad. And that's where we are right now. We're at the end. And, I think it's a very kind of vague and blunt statement to say the Samuelis don't care, because I think they do. But in the same breath there, allowing this guy to continue when the team is this bad and not doing anything. Like, we saw that the Canadians have a positive record. They lost, 6 out of 8 and fired Claude Julien.
Okay, but wait. That's a completely different situation, though. The Montreal Canadiens were still in a playoff race, and they had just recently made more than one addition to the roster to improve it in the short term. I understand why the Canadians fired Claude Julien, given that they didn't feel that they were performing. I think it's stupid. But I understand it. They have a very good chance still to get back into a really good spot going into the playoffs. And I don't think that can be discounted. Anaheim, the way that we are framing this conversation starts to get into some of the conversations around coaches and general managers that gets a little iffy for me, because I think there is a degree to which there are conversations that are happening that we don't know. I think it is definitely fair to question why the Samuelis have let it get to this point with Bob Murray, when it does feel like there were warning signs the last handful of seasons that he was starting to slip a little in as far as his ability to execute his job. But we can't ignore, and I hate doing this because I think it's stupid because they're rich, but whatever. We can't ignore the COVID part of it and the loss of income and stuff like that. I'm not sure it makes sense to fire him only then to just have somebody else come in. And again, like you said, as far as you don't look at his total history when you're making a decision about him being in the off, like him being in charge. But I do think you look at that whole thing and go, look, he gave us probably the best run we've ever seen in Anaheim hockey. He oversaw it. Yeah, he inherited a couple of really great players in Getzy and Perry, but like he did do things to keep this team consistently at the top of the division and in the playoff race for the better part of a decade. And I don't think that can be ignored. So I do think that's where he doesn't get fired, he gets promoted. And they allow him to retain, honestly, just a little bit of his dignity in that role.
He's earned it.
Yeah. And I get, like I said, I get why there's a degree of being frustrated with ownership insofar as it doesn't seem like we've heard from very them ever, other than at the end of last season where it was, we still trust Bob. We think this is going to be fine. Bob trusts Eakin. We trust Eakin. It's going to be great. But that's also one of the things that I think is a big strength of them is they're not meddlers. You know, we don't have a GM, an ownership group or individuals that, you know, think they can do GM duties because they played NHL 21 or they play fantasy. You know what I mean?
Hey.
No, we're smart, but other people are stupid.
Let's all relax about that real quick.
You know, but I do think them being hands-off is a huge positive, especially in a small market. And so I think to say that they don't care is unfair, given how much money that they have invested in the community, in making youth hockey stick.
I mean, but look, they still have to find a way to bring all the fans back next season who've been paying. If you're a season ticket holder, I believe you haven't gotten a dime back. Correct me if I'm wrong in chat. I know there's several of you in here. No one's gotten any money back. Haven't seen a game. Like they're never gonna not care is what I'm saying. Like they've got to bring people back in.
And that's what I'm saying. I'm not discounting that things need to be done now, decisions need to be made, but I do think it's a very particular circumstance, and I would give them this summer to see how they handle it, because I think this is absolutely, like both of you said with bringing in new people, this is a very important part or a moment, transition moment in the franchise. And so I think how they handle this summer will be crucial, because you start to wonder about what happens with Zegras if, you know, it feels like they're like, no, Bob Murray's fine. And then Bob Murray sticks around for 10 years and never gets Zegras any help. You know, there are things that come the beginning of next season. We may have perfect justification to be frustrated with the degree of their hands-off approach. But I do think it is a positive that they do all the things that they can do, and they allow the people that they have hired to do
one thing
jobs.
I do know is whoever does come in to replace Bob Murray at any point is going to be inheriting a nice group of prospects. When you look at Zegras, Drysdale, Perreault right now, and then whoever we get in the first round, and potentially another first-round pick based on trades this year, you know, a top 5 pick in this year's draft, so guys like Luke Hughes and Owen Power. And then, you know, moving into next year in the 2022 draft, the Ducks are likely going to be in the top 5 and top 10 of that draft as one. You got guys like Shane Wright and Brad Lambert and Matthew Savoy at the top of that draft too. So whoever does come in is going to inherit a pretty nice lineup. And I know we're pushing close to an hour here, so we should probably get on to some of the trade news that I know a lot of people are waiting for us to cover here. And pretty much all of it stems from Elliot Friedman's 31 Thoughts article that he put out today, where he listed 2 points on the Ducks. The first one and the longest one regarding Rickard Rakell, just kind of restating that the price is high. Calgary was in and did not want to pay that price, and he's not sure that there's a match with Toronto because of the high price. We still haven't really gotten any leaks in terms of what that price is, whether it's a top prospect and a first-round pick, which I think is what a lot of people expect it to be, but it could even be higher than that, just based on a few teams being out on him. But apparently the Ducks want young players with a little more of an NHL track record, which kind of goes with the comments we heard from earlier this week that he's looking for a young player between the age of 24 and 27 to bring in Rickard Rakell. I know Steven and I talked about this heavily on the last podcast, so Pat, I want to get your thoughts on this. If you're trading Rickard Rakell, do you want a player between the age of 24 and 27 to be the big part of that return, or would you rather a first-round pick and a top-end prospect for him?
I would rather a player in the age range of 21 to 23 and 21 to 24. I don't want anybody that's over 25, honestly, in that return back. There's probably already going to be term on that contract. There's probably going to be a lot of money on that contract, especially if he's a good player, because he's already either past his he's going to be past his first contract. His ELC's done, most likely. I don't want that kind of money coming back on the books right away. So prefer the earlier, the better in the career. I don't know why he's hunting for, like, you only hunt for 24 to 27 if you're making a run, right? Like, if you're going to get a quick young player who can add some sort of capabilities of scoring onto your team or on defense on a run. It doesn't make any sense. So if I'm pitted between getting that guy or picking a prospect, I'd go picking prospect, honestly. I don't know what the hell Bob would be doing looking at a roster player age 24 to 27.
It's almost like he wants to save his ass.
Yeah, we have a 0% chance of doing anything as far as going to the playoffs. And if we did, I mean, I hope we don't play the ass.
It'd be a fun, quick 4-game series, right?
like unbelievable. Like, what's the point? The Ducks have like $15 million in forward cap space alone freeing up this summer. I know they have RFAs to sign, but those aren't going to be massive deals. Plenty of cap space to toss around here. I don't think there's any reason to put more money on the books. Yeah, get the pick and prospect. Just don't undervalue Rakell and feel like you're pigeonholed in there and you got to take a deal. Like, dude.
I think the perfect thing from that article, though, that kind of mentions the personality of Bob Murray is that there's a lot of times where he said he's not ready to do this, not ready to do this, not ready to do this, and then next day he wakes up in the morning, okay, well, let's get this done. Like, that's what Elliot Friedman kind of mentioned of what he's kind of found out about Bob Murray over the years is, and we've heard that in different kind of, when details of certain deals get released, is that kind of seems to be the trend with Bob Murray, is he'll say.
What's a comparable player to Rickard Rakell right now that's been moved of recent
Tyler
time?
Toffoli out of LA.
Yeah. What did he fetch, a second?
I think
prospect?
no doubt he would fetch a second in a prospect. I think.
I think that's what Toffoli got.
At the low end.
He got, but he got the best prospect, or one of the best prospects in Vancouver's system.
Yeah, Tyler Madden was a top 3 prospect in that system. Outside of like Vasily Podkolzin, Tyler Madden was up there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I'd be looking. I would put money on Rickard Rakell not being a Duck.
That's the thing. Like I would too, but then you get reports. Again, it's getting close to trade deadline. The Ducks are, as Greg Wisniewski put it this morning, are one of the only teams that are really open for business. So we're going to get a lot of conflicting rumors about who they are and who they're not willing to trade. And Rickard Rakell's name has been on both ends of that spectrum here, where the price is high. The Ducks are willing to trade him, but they're also willing to keep him. They're waiting for that specific deal. And I know it's so easy to look from the outside and say, oh, there's such a match here between Anaheim and Toronto, because Toronto's looking to move, Dubas came out today, they're looking to move a top prospect to bring in, a rental type player, which Rickard Rakell essentially is. You get him for a season and a half at a nice reduced cap hit. The fit there just seems so perfect with Toronto against the cap, the Ducks looking for young assets. Toronto would probably also be willing to go for their first round pick.
The beauty about Rickard Rakell being traded right now is you trade him for the run. Let's just throw shit at the wall here. You trade him to Toronto. Toronto wins the cup. Toronto can just fleece him next year to somebody else. Like, just get rid of him next year. You don't have to keep him on the books. You can trade him. You have full control of him. You have that's maneuverability. That's a huge asset for Rickard Rakell to be added to what he's going to be giving with you skill. That contract is super helpful if you're a GM.
Yeah, if you're Dubas, you could flip him, like you said, right?
In a middle 6 role. Yeah, you can flip him somewhere else next season.
Play Rickard Rakell with Austin Matthews or John Tavares. That's a win for your organization.
Bleh, disgusting. That's just disgusting, man. I would rather watch Toronto hockey if he goes there, honestly. Just so I can watch John Tavares win a cup.
That's the thing, though, right? Is it's always these deals that feel like there's such a fit that they never happen, right? Because there's always things behind the scenes that we don't know, that the price could be a lot higher than we thought, or Toronto's not willing to give a high top prospect and a first round pick, or whatever it may be, right? Like, it's always the deals that seem like they make the most sense and that they should happen that never do, right? And Ricardo,
did you guys talk about this in the last show too?
Yeah.
That it's purely a loss if Bobby doesn't make these trades. It's next year's just going to be a very problematic season.
Specifically, Rickard Rakell, I think.
Yes, 100%. There's definitely other guys that I'm sure they're willing to move. I know they want to move Adam Henrique. It seems pretty obvious. That's going to be a tough thing to move. But Rickard Rakell...
Is he not good? I keep being told he's very good.
Hey, if he keeps playing like he did tonight, a retained contract on Adam Henrique is getting a lot more enticing than it was when he passed through waivers.
Except when he had a great night against a sub 900 goaltender. What a beautiful night that was.
For three points in the first period against Hunter Miska. So it's not you can read between the lines on that one. But okay, last part about this we have to discuss too, because it's outside of Rickard Rakell. It's talking about a lot of the other guys, and a guy that Steven and I talked about heavily on the last show is Troy Terry, because that's when the rumors kind of came out that the Ducks were. And it was really an 11-second hit on Sportsnet where Elliot Friedman basically came out and said, didn't even say the Ducks were shopping him, didn't say he was asking for a trade or that he was available. Pretty much just he said that Troy Terry was an interesting player to keep an eye on that could use a change of scenery. And of course, like not just in Ducks fans, if that was any team, that throws people into a spiral in terms of, okay, Troy Terry's available. Why are they shopping him? Whatever. And again, he's very vague in his article saying, we will see where things go with talented Troy Terry. So it just pretty much seems like the Ducks aren't shopping him. He's not available in the sense that they're putting his name out there. But he's not in the same breath as Max Jones, who they mention in this article and say that teams have asked about him and it's a no-go. It's like teams are calling about Troy Terry. He's listening, but he's not willing to trade him. I think that's kind of the distinction we're at this point, is he's not being shopped. He's not openly available, but he's listening at the very least.
Chris makes a good point. If a team asks about Terry, it doesn't mean the Ducks are shopping him.
Yeah.
So if his name pops up, it doesn't mean anything. Go ahead, Steven. I was gonna rant on something there, but you first.
No, go.
I was just gonna say, Bobby, as much as we just talked about him for like 15 minutes probably, he had his chance to not make the decision to keep Jakob Silfverberg, and he kept him. He had the chance to not give Adam Henrique a ridiculous contract. He did it anyway. Now he has the chance to trade Rickard Rakell, where he's probably at his near peak being valuable. He was probably worth more when he was having a great year 3 seasons ago. Obviously, but those things happen. But right now he's scoring and he looks good, and he's got that little extra year. So if Bob fails on this, where do you guys think that kind of takes the Ducks next season? Because I don't want to talk about Bob necessarily, but he has to go because there's just no more room on this team with these prospects coming and needing ice time. That's another problem the Ducks are going to run into, right?
Yeah. I mean, quickly before, because I want Steven to answer this, but can you also, mentioning the contracts and the deals he got wrong, can you not also in the same breath here say that he did, I don't want to say win, but did well in the Ondrej Kase and Brandon Montour trades? Because Ondrej Kase barely plays a game for Boston right now. He got a first-round pick and a prospect. And
he's played 8
and Brandon Montour
for Boston
has regressed since going to Buffalo. And obviously it's Buffalo, but still, you got Brendan Gooley, who, it's Brendan Gooley, but you got a first-round pick. I don't care that first-round pick is turned to Braden Tracy and he hasn't looked great. You got a first-round pick. You can't evaluate a first-round pick by who you took. You got a first-round pick. It's a lottery shoot when you go into the draft, and you could get, I don't want to harp on Braden Tracy right now, but you could get a guy who never makes the NHL. You could get a superstar, but you had that chance, and I think as much as we can say he didn't do this, didn't do that, if he doesn't trade Rickard Rakell, I do think it's a failure, but he did still do okay with the Ondrej Kase and Brandon Montour trades.
Yeah, no, and I think there is an interesting thing to point out there is because I still think he won the Richie Heinen trade. I think it's just he won it. I don't, whatever. But I do think it is notable that the trades that he seems to do the best at are the younger players, and the older players he doesn't trade them and then signs them. And so I think it's a very interesting thing because I think it's as clear a picture as we get of where his head is at outside of what he has said. And those, to me, moves definitely do back up his belief on some level that this team isn't that far apart or isn't that far away from where they want to be. Disagree, agree, whatever. But he did make some good trades and he did sign some bad deals. The thing for me is if he doesn't trade anybody, right? Really, anybody of significance by the time the trade deadline passes, there aren't any UFAs this summer that Anaheim is trying to move on from. So they still have the expansion draft, should they desire to bring in somebody before that, and the entry draft, should they decide to bring in somebody before that. So I think while it certainly limits what you can get back because they're not getting that extra playoff run, I do still think there will be value this summer if somebody comes in and is looking to move those. Now, if Bob Murray doesn't move those, then I think what you need to do is take a long, hard look at moving him out, is getting rid of him. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think not trading them is fatal simply because the people you're looking to trade, with the exception of Getzlaf, have at least one more year on any of the contracts we're talking about. So I think it could hurt, but I don't think it's fatal.
So yeah, and I guess in kind of summary then, if we don't move or if he doesn't move Rickard Rakell, do you guys think it's a failure? I think, Pat, you were saying yes, it is.
Oh yeah, it's 100% a failure. And if you move Rakell, I mean, just go get Patrick Laine in the deal and then sign him. Do that. Seems easy.
There's an RFA, yeah.
It seems easy, yeah.
I'm
sure they'll be open to it.
Just him and Steele. Screw it. Him and Steele together.
I think right now, like, what do you do if you're Bob Murray and you don't get the high price you're asking for Rickard Rakell? Because I think then you have to take into account what you could get for him as a rental next year. If you think the price you're getting for him this year is what you'll get for him as a rental next year, that's the only situation I could argue and maybe not trading him. And even then, I would still say you should probably move him. But if you're getting a first round pick and a B-level prospect, which is what they got for Ondrej Kase, I don't feel comfortable with that return, right? Because I think Rickard Rakell is more valuable in terms of just being a more productive player further along in his career with a better track record and a ridiculously good contract for teams that are pressed against the cap. I think you have to get more than you got for Ondrej Kase in return for Rickard Rakell for it to be a success. And I don't think, clearly he's not willing to get pigeonholed into making a deal. I don't think you get forced to make a deal you're not comfortable with just to move him. And I know I'm going against what I said here, but next year, even as a rental at that contract, I think you can still get a first round pick and a B-level prospect. And if that's what you're being offered this year, then maybe you pass. Maybe you don't go for it, and unless you can get kind of higher than what you might get for him next year.
Bobby's going to trade it to Buffalo for Sam Reinhart. Come on. He fits in that 24 to 27 range. He's an
Sam
RFA.
Reinhart's what, 25?
I think so.
25. Yeah, but I think he's making like over $5 million.
Yeah, he's making like 5.25. I was just looking at him. So
Bobby wants a 24 to 27. He'll get a 25-year-old kid. Sam Reinhart's a good player. He's in a really bad situation in Buffalo. So yeah, that's what Bobby's gonna do. Yeah. Either way, Rakell's gone before.
Would you like that trade if it was for Sam Reinhart? Because I know you're kind of joking around there, but would you actually like bringing in Sam Reinhart for Rickard Rakell?
I wouldn't hate it, honestly. I wouldn't be something that I'd hate. I don't see the reason for it necessarily. You're just getting 2 years. of age, and this team's not going to be good in 2 years. So I think it's better to go for a pick and a prospect than it would be to take Sam Reinhart and spend $7 million.
Yeah, I think he's a better player than Rickard Rakell.
Oh, he is for sure.
Doesn't have the 30-goal seasons, but 50, 65, and 50 points in 69 last year, 19 and 25 this year. Right, kind of on par with what Rakell's producing this year, at least.
He's got 19 points.
Yeah, he's
11 goals.
25. But he doesn't do anything for this team now, right? Like, yeah, he basically replaces Rickard Rakell's production this year and comes in and maybe is a little bit better of a player right now than Rickard Rakell is, but the time the Ducks really need him, he's going to be 27, 28, and I think the only argument you can make there is, if you get Rodion Amirov in a first-round pick, let's say, from Toronto, or you could get Sam Reinhart from Buffalo, the only way you would take Sam Reinhart from Buffalo is to get more of a sure thing, because you don't know what that first-round pick is going to be, and you really don't know what Rodion Amirov's going to be or Nick Robinson's going to be until they make it to the NHL on a consistent basis. I think that's the only argument you can make for going out and getting a roster player like a Sam Reinhart, is that you want to avoid that, the risk there and getting a draft pick and a prospect, which I think is the wrong decision to make right now. If you're an organization like the Ducks, you got to be getting draft picks, you got to be getting prospects, and building for, a longer term future rather than trying to be competitive in 2 years. Because I don't think the Ducks have the pieces to be competitive in 2 years from now.
No, this is a 5-year build.
Well, here's the other part of this, and I don't necessarily disagree with anything you just said, Ed, but I do think there is a hard part of it that is the holistic or the total view of it, right? Because the problem is if you're able to move out Adam Henrique for like not retain any salary, let's just say you pull it off. Okay, that's a step in the right direction. Now let's say you send Rakell out and you get Reinhart and a 3rd-round pick. All right, maybe not the best, but we have a decent player now, blah, 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 blah. The problem of trading for, Rakell for Reinhart is it doesn't fit with the roster as it is. But the roster could change and needs to change. So trying to evaluate some of these trades, like I don't think Sam Reinhart would be a terrible deal if they moved out a couple of older guys.
Yeah.
Right? If you move Cam Fowler or Josh Manson or both, you move Henrique, you move Rakell. Maybe you keep Silverberg. He's a little bit cheaper. He's a winger. We've seen what he can do. I think that maybe makes a lot of sense.
There's a lot of pieces to move to get the Reinhart, but I see what you're saying. If you're gonna start the roster over and blow it up,
right?
And blow it up and give the 1 or 2 seed to Reinhart, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. At that point, what you're doing is you're probably looking at bringing back Getzy, moving him into an official 3rd role, and kind of having a Reinhart as a nominal first-line center, depending on what Zegras is and depending on what Lundstrom is. So I'm not saying any of that to disagree with you, but I just think there is a degree to which some of these trades, when analyzing them in a vacuum, may go one way or the other, but the total approach is difficult. And that's why I think it's very telling that all of us said change the front office. We didn't say, I mean, you did, but that's because you were hinting at the front office change, the regime change, stuff like that. We're not just saying just get rid of all the bad contracts. It's get rid of all the guys who are older than X who aren't going to be part of this team by the next time we're competing.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I think that is very telling, the degree to which, between that and get a new front office, where we feel the team is at and whether or not we feel confident that the people in charge now are the ones who can do it.
I love and hate trade speculation at the same time, but I can't wait.
Because we could talk a whole hour.
Yeah, but I also can't wait until we have an actual deal to talk about and analyze and break down, because then it means the Ducks actually did something and made a move. And honestly, like, I know it's been back-to-back years where we've had one major move. I think this needs to be the year where it's a couple, and it feels like it's shaping up to be like that. But then you remember last year where a lot of tweets came out that the Ducks were very active at the deadline, and it was kind of like that the year before. So we're getting that same sense this year where the Ducks are one of the most active teams at the deadline, but then they make only one deal. And, if I had to pick three guys for them to move, it's probably Rakell, Henrique, and Manson by the deadline this year, or at least by the draft.
Yeah, but the other thing is one major move, right? Because they made the most trades out of any team last year on the deadline, because they did the Milano trade and all these other little pieces. But yes, they really do seem to only have a tolerance for one significant trade a season. I think it'll be interesting. I think the expansion draft is a gift and a curse at this point, because I think if there's no expansion draft, it's a little bit easier to justify keeping Rakell right after the deadline, because going into the draft, the entry draft, there's going to be teams who maybe they lost a little bit of lottery luck, or they didn't get as high, you know what I mean? Or you always have the one team that makes the surprise run, and now you call that guy like, this guy's got another deal, blah blah blah, give me a pick. And I think that ability to be a little bit more specific with what you target at an entry draft is vital, because you have the draft order set. The problem with that is between those two things, or between the trade deadline and the entry draft, is the expansion draft. And if you keep Rakell to trade him later, you need to protect him. And if you protect him, what is that costing you?
Yeah,
so
it doesn't make any sense.
This is the part where you get into that stupid phrase, asset management and things like that. But I do think that, as much as I think there's going to be a little extra potential to be interesting or frisky because of all of those things, I do think there is also a greater risk in the back-to-back impact heading into next season.
I think people forget how hard it is to also trade in a year with a looming expansion draft, because teams are also worrying about who they're going to protect and who they're going to bring in. And any team that trades for Rickard Rakell is going to need to protect him. So that essentially does shrink your market a bit if that team already has a set protection list, and then they have to worry about Rickard Rakell because he's got that extra year on his deal. This is the type of year where rentals become more valuable, because you don't have to worry about protecting them. Wherever Rickard Rakell goes, or Josh Manson goes, a team has to worry about protecting them. And on that sense, with defensemen, it's even harder to move defensemen this year, because you have that 8 skater or 3 defenseman rule. And if Josh Manson's not getting traded to a team with 3 defensemen that they want to protect already, because then they also have to protect him, or they will lose him to Seattle.
But that's the other thing I was going to say, which for the team on the other end is interesting, right? Because how many teams do you think Rakell walks into the room and isn't in the top 7 value forwards, right? Because the young guys are going to be exempt, and, maybe some of the other guys are on contracts that a team with as heavy an analytics presence and a fresh sheet like Seattle, maybe they're not going to take those kind of guys. So maybe it does become a little bit easier to bring a Rakell in and slot him into one of those 7 spots. But I definitely do think the defenseman thing is hard, because it's not necessary. I don't think it's a given that Manson walks in as one of the 3 best defensemen on any team that he goes to. I think based on the way that need and trades tend to happen, I think it's more likely that if he gets traded, it'll be to someone that has intents of keeping him around, because they're firmly in their window and they like what he brings. But I think it's going to be a really interesting thing as far as how all of this kind of shapes out and what it does to the conversation.
I have to mention something in the chat here, because it was cracking me up a bit. Somebody said, I think Trump said in the chat that he'd rather have Hakanpää over Shattenkirk. Somebody asked why, and he just put old, fat, sucks.
Jesus Christ.
Just harsh. But yeah, I think I agree with kind of all those points, and it'll be nice, like I said, to kind of actually break down a trade whenever we get to it, and hopefully we get to it at some point here. We are about a month away from the April 12th deadline, and with that 14-week quarantine period for a lot of teams here, that becomes, a 2-week out from a kind of makeshift deadline of being able to get the most out of that player if you're looking to bring them into your organization, especially for the North Division. If you're looking at a team, those teams looking to bring players in, I think those are going to be the most active teams over the next couple of weeks here, especially the Toronto Maple Leafs, and looking to kind of make those trades to make their team better so they can get these guys through that 2-week quarantine period and get them in. So we'll have to wait and see. Say that every year, but we've got at least enough exciting news come out, which is nice for us, especially to have a lot of stuff to talk about. But it also creates a lot of drama and speculation on Twitter between the fan base and what the Ducks are going to do.
We'll just have to see what happens with that. But like I said, I think most of this stuff's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. I really do. Ticky-tack moves on deadline day. The big stuff's going to happen between now and April 1st.
Yeah, I think that's probably likely for sure.
That'll be fun then. Well, I think that'll be it for us tonight, guys. Are you guys back on the show on Thursday?
Yes, I believe so.
You guys are slated for Thursday. So Eddy and Pete Davidson, or someone called him Sniffles in the chat, I saw that, back on the mics on Thursday. No one ever gives Steven a break. But we appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys coming up here on Thursday night after the game against the Coyotes.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.